Alexander Harrison was a man of substance and simplicity, the kind of person who could stroll into a boardroom and casually suggest $1 million idea while wearing scuffed boots. His wealth, earned through years of grit and savvy business decisions, didn't change his style or his values. Most notably, Alexander wore his red MAGA cap with pride. To him, it wasn't just political. It was personal. A symbol of resilience, independence, and staying true to oneself, no matter the odds. That Tuesday morning, the sun glinted off towering skyscrapers as Alexander parked his understated SUV in front of the city's most exclusive Ferrari dealership. The place exuded opulence. Marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of designer lighting, while polished cars sparkled like jewels. The air smelled faintly of leather and money. As Alexander stepped inside, the staff barely glanced his way, until they saw the cap. Among them, Chad Williamson, the sales manager, zeroed in like a hawk spotting prey. Tall, sharply dressed, and oozing arrogance, Chad strutted over, his polished loafers clicking against the marble. His eyes lingered on Alexander's MAGA cap and faded jeans, his lips curving into a patronizing smile. "Good morning," Chad said, his tone sugared with fake politeness. "Can I help you with something, sir?" Alexander's calm demeanor never wavered. He nodded toward a gleaming red Ferrari, perched under dramatic showroom lights. "I'm interested in that one." Chad's smile tightened, and his eyes swept over Alexander, clearly unimpressed. "That model starts at $300,000, he said slowly, as if explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "Are you sure it's the right fit?" The room stilled. A few customers glanced over, their curiosity piqued. Alexander's smile remained steady. "I didn't ask about the price," he replied, his voice even. "I said I'm interested." Chad chuckled under his breath, the kind of laugh that says, "Bless your heart." "We don't usually let people test drive unless they're serious buyers." Alexander raised an eyebrow, his expression a mixture of calm and amusement. "You assume I'm not serious?" Chad crossed his arms, leaning back slightly. "Let's just say this dealership has standards." The tension thickened. A nearby couple exchanged awkward glances, their whispers just audible. But Alexander simply nodded, his smile unwavering. "Good to know," he said, his voice soft yet sharp. Then, with deliberate calm, he turned on his heel and walked out, leaving Chad smug and oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond the showroom doors. The slide didn't go unnoticed. Alexander Harrison, unshakable as ever, felt the wave of judgment wash over him. Not just from Chad, but from a few other curious onlookers in the showroom. The smirks, the whispered remarks, the sideways glances, they all painted a vivid picture of shallow arrogance. Yet, he remained calm, his confidence unruffled. "Standards, huh?" Alexander said, his lips curling into a faint, amused smile. His tone was casual, but the subtle edge beneath it was razor-sharp. "Interesting." Chad, emboldened by the perceived upper hand, leaned back slightly, crossing his arms with the kind of smugness that comes from years of unchecked ego. "I'm just being honest," he said, his tone oozing condescension. "We cater to a refined clientele." A ripple of muffled chuckles escaped from a nearby couple, pretending not to eavesdrop. One of them glanced nervously at Alexander, sensing a tension that felt almost combustible. Alexander, however, didn't flinch. His thoughtful nod only deepened the room's uneasy silence. "Good to know," Alexander said slowly, as if mulling over Chad's words. Then he raised an eyebrow, fixing Chad with an inquisitive gaze. "So, you're refusing to sell me the car?" Chad's grin widened into a full-blown smirk. "I didn't say that," he replied, the fake politeness barely masking his disdain. "But if you want to waste our time—" Without another word, Alexander turned on his heel and headed for the exit. His steps were deliberate, each one echoing against the polished marble. The room seemed to hold its breath as onlookers watched, unsure of what exactly they'd just witnessed. Chad, however, broke the silence with a muttered, "Good riddance," as he shook his head, his self-satisfied grin firmly in place. But as the showroom doors closed behind Alexander, the faint trace of his knowing smile lingered. What Chad didn't know, what none of them could possibly have known, was that Alexander wasn't just a wealthy man. He was a billionaire, a man with a sharp sense of humor and an unmistakable flair for teaching lessons. And Chad? Well, he had just enrolled in one. The next morning, Alexander returned to the dealership, but he wasn't alone. Flanked by a team of sharp-suited lawyers, their polished shoes clicking against the marble floor, he exuded an air of quiet authority. The morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to spotlight his entrance. Chad, perched at his usual spot by the espresso machine, was mid-recount of yesterday's run-in with the MAGA guy to a colleague. "The nerve of him!" Chad sneered. "Honestly, I did the dealership a favor by sending him packing." As Alexander entered, Chad froze mid-sentence. His face paled slightly, but he forced a smile, hoping to reassert control. "Oh, look who's back," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Forget something?" Alexander's calm, measured voice cut through the room like a knife. "Good morning," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I'd like to speak to the owner." Chad, still trying to piece together what was happening, stepped forward, his usual bravado faltering. The owner's not available," he said, his voice wobbling slightly. "But I can help you." Alexander's smile widened ever so slightly, the kind that signals a storm is about to break. "You're looking at him," he replied smoothly. "I finalized the purchase of this dealership an hour ago." Chad's jaw dropped so fast it was a wonder it didn't hit the marble floor. "Wait, what?" he stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. One of Alexander's lawyers stepped forward with the precision of a trained soldier, handing Chad an official-looking document. "As of this morning," the lawyer announced, "Mr. Harrison is the sole owner of this dealership, effective immediately." The color drained from Chad's face entirely. He clutched the paper with trembling hands, scanning it desperately as if searching for a loophole. "But he stammered, his earlier confidence shattered into tiny, irreparable pieces. Alexander tilted his head slightly, his voice calm yet cutting. "You know, Chad, you were right yesterday. This dealership should have standards, and that starts with respecting every customer who walks through the door." The showroom fell silent, the tension almost palpable. Chad, visibly shrinking under the weight of his own actions, muttered a weak, "I didn't mean." But Alexander didn't let him finish. "Consider this your formal notice," he said coolly. "Your employment here is no longer required." As Chad stood there, stunned, the other staff exchanged wide-eyed glances, trying to suppress their grins. Alexander turned to his team, his voice warm again. "Shall we get to work?" The lawyers nodded, following him toward the conference room. The final blow came when Alexander paused, turned back to Chad, and said with a faint smirk, "Oh, and about those standards, I'd say we just raised them." The doors to the conference room closed behind him, leaving Chad to stew in the wreckage of his arrogance. The rest of the staff watched in stunned silence as Alexander continued. "Effective immediately, you're no longer employed here. Consider it a lesson in customer service." Chad tried to protest, but Alexander raised a hand. "Save it. Your attitude has no place here." As Chad gathered his things and slunk out of the dealership, Alexander addressed the remaining staff. "Let this be a new beginning. This dealership will be a place where every customer is treated with respect, no matter who they are or what they believe." The room erupted into quiet applause. Word of the incident spread quickly, and within hours, social media was ablaze with stories about the millionaire in the MAGA cap who bought a Ferrari dealership just to teach a lesson in humility. And as for Alexander, he finally got his Ferrari and ensured that no one in that dealership would ever underestimate a customer again.